Ladies and gentlemen, if we could just gather in the tent. For those that, there's plenty of chairs for those who want to be seated. Before we begin the service, we ask for those that are present here, if you have a cell phone or pager, if you could turn it to the silent mode. Again, there's plenty of seats to be used. Please do not let them go empty. Officiating today is Rabbi Michael Schwab and Rabbi Alex Friedman.
I'm going to begin the service in memory of Howard Turner with the 23rd song. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi l'achsar, binoteh sheyar bitzeni, al mei menuchot yinahaleni, nafshi eshovev, yancheni v'maglei tzedek leman shemo, gam ki elech begei tzal mavet lo irara ki ata imadi, shivtecha mishantecha hema yenachamuni, Taroch lefanai shulchan neged tzorai, Dishanta v'Hashem roshi kosi revaya, Ach tov v'chesed yurdefuni kol yemei chayai, V'shavti b'veit Adonai liorech yamim. If you want to join me and you open up your pamphlet, you can join me in the English and with Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. That is surely where we believe the soul of Howard Turner is in the house of the Lord forever. May he always dwell with goodness and mercy. Amen.
I'll now recite the 15th Psalm. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai, mi yagor ba'ohalecha, mi yishkon behar kodshecha, holech tamim ufor tzedek, v'dover emet b'yavavo. Lo vagal al leshono, lo asa lebehu ra'a, v'cherpa lo nasa al keravo. Nivse ve'enav nim'as, v'et Adonai yechabed, nishbar lahara v'lo yamir. Kaspo lo natan b'neshech, v'shochad al naki lo lakach. Ose ele lo yimot le'olam. A Psalm of David. Do we deserve to enter God's sanctuary? Can we merit a place in the presence of God? Live with integrity. Do what is right. Speak the truth without deceit. Have no slander upon your tongue. Do no evil to others. Do not mistreat your neighbor. Spurn a contemptible person, but honor those who revere God. Never retract a promise once made, though it may bring you harm. Lend no money at unfair rates. Accept no bribe against the innocent. Make these deeds your own. Then shall you stand firm forever. Amen. It's hard, at least from those of us who knew him at Bethel, to speak very much about Howard without mentioning Torah reading. That was his passion, and he shared that with others, and it really grew and spread to become contagious in the best way at Bethel. And within the whole Torah, every which of which he cherished. perhaps what he loved the most were these two parshas called Matot Maseh, the last two portions in the book of Numbers. And every year, it was his to read. And we knew that, and we didn't need to assign that. And those are, together, they are long. They are difficult. They are challenging. But he did it, and he loved it so much. And the second Parsha Maseh is about a Masaot, journeys. The journeys of the Jewish people through the desert. And it recalls the journeys by naming the place. Place 1, place 2, place 3. And each place was itself a memory, a whole story unto itself. And Howard's journey at Bethel lasted many years, many decades, and I only knew him for the last 4 years, the time that I was there. But even within that, I could see how much he cared about his passions, his values. Bethel, making a minyan, reading Torah, sharing that gift with others, welcoming new people to the service on Shabbat morning by sitting with them, a love for Israel, and a deep passion for educating our youth. Those are the postmarks on his journeys on Bethel. And Parashat Maseh concludes the book of Numbers. And as we do at the end of any book, we stand up and we recite, and he would do this too, Chazak, Chazak, v'nitchazek. Be strong, let us strengthen one another. And to you, Howard, I say, on behalf of all of us, you have made us more chazak at Bethel, the Jewish community, and the people of Israel.
Thank you, Rabbi Friedman, for those beautiful words of tribute. I want to recite a prayer that is recited on behalf of Jewish leaders when they pass away. Let us now praise distinguished leaders, those who came before us. They are a great glory to God who created them. Their lives proclaim God's majesty. They were honored in their generation and were a source of pride in their times. Some of them have left a name so that all declare their praise. Their good fortune is transmitted to their descendants, their heritage to future generations. Their posterity shall endure forever, and their glory will not be blotted out. Their bodies will lie buried in peace, and their names will live on forever. People will recall and recount their wisdom, and the congregation will sing their praise. This is how we will remember Howard. And Ben Sira also wrote a tribute in the name of the children of those who have passed. And he wrote, when parents who have taught their children pass on, that passing is not death. As long as the child lives, there's a part of the parent that cannot die. When alive, a parent rejoices with his children, and in death that parent will not grieve, for he knows that his legacy has been passed down from generation to generation, L'dor Vador. I'm now going to call upon one of his children, Jerry, to say some words about his father.
Thank you all for being here. My grandfather, my father's father Samuel, Zichrono Livracha, was an obstetrician, and his mother Sarah, my grandmother Zichrono Livracha, was a teacher. They placed great value on education and hard work. As my father told it, my father Zichrono Livracha told it, his father thought he wasn't working hard enough in high school, and so enrolled him as an early entrant to the University of Chicago, although he'd only completed his second year of high school. He never did graduate from high school, and my mother often ribbed him about this. Nevertheless, he earned his bachelor's degree at age 20 and his law degree, and set the path for his brothers David and Robert, Zichrono Livracha. His experiences at the University of Chicago convinced my father that he could learn anything. For example, he insisted on reading, but not understanding some of my work. Nevertheless, he was particularly delighted that it was his alma mater, where I was first awarded tenure and an endowed professorship. My mother, Zichrono Livracha, was a devoted teacher who instilled a love of learning in my sister and me that led us, and ultimately my daughters, to pursue postgraduate education. My father often observed with pleasure that his children were both doctors. He also joked that, as an attorney and the only non-doctor amongst his father, brothers, and children, he was the black sheep of his family. But on occasion, he also took pride in noting that his great-grandfather had been a judge in Ukraine. So maybe there was some legal blood there anyway. Beyond family, my father had two great passions, Judaism and the law. He approached both as a scholar, a dedicated practitioner, and he was always ready to deliver spontaneous, if not repetitive, lectures on either. On topics related to religion, he often quoted from his extensive knowledge of the writings of Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks. I'm sure my family and many of you can recite some of my father's commentaries from memory. You may not, but we also know far more about the arcane rights of Illinois mechanics lien law than is appropriate for any non-attorney. My father's religious community was of paramount importance to him, and he was an active member of North Suburban Synagogue Beth, where he could be reliably found in his reserved seat, the fourth row, on the aisle to the right of the center aisle, every Shabbat. He was also greatly honored to chant Torah, Haftorah, and deliver the occasional sermon at Bethel, which he always sent me. In nearly 60 years of membership, as president, trustee, and member of nearly every committee, he was devoted to Bethel. He could be as formidable at committee meetings as he was in the courtroom, but all knew that a sense of morality, fairness, and tikkun olam permeated his efforts. He was also true to this in his personal life. After reading a children's book about making the world more beautiful by completing 3 tasks with my daughter and his granddaughter, Hannah, he created the Three Things Foundation and actively sought input from both Hannah and Emily when deciding where to direct donations. He is also generous with tzedakah in many other areas, including Israel and Soviet Jewry. At Bethel, he honored my mother by dedicating a classroom in her memory. But then, after talking with his granddaughter Emily and learning about new technology, he decided to expand this contribution to include smart boards and teacher training in how to use those smart boards. And that has really transformed Bethel's religious school. His most prominent contributions in religion and the law focused on education. After he saw Rabbi Reuven Frankel, Zichrono Livracha, teach my grade school class to chant Torah, my father concluded that this education should be available to everyone. As a result, he conceived, funded, and nurtured the Ba'al Korei Institute, which teaches and promotes chanting of Torah by entire families and, now known as Team Torah, remains part of the fabric of Bethel. He also took great joy in teaching his grandson Tulane and taking him to Israel for a bar mitzvah at the wall. He was similarly delighted by his granddaughter's Torah reading at their B'nai Mitzvah and their roles as leaders in their college Jewish communities. My father's sense of tikkun also affected his professional choices. He once told me how he had resigned from his first job as a lawyer because he believed the firm's clients were taking advantage of low-income homeowners and tenants. Ultimately, he joined Gould & Ratner, where he worked for material service and maintained a smaller private practice. This seemed fitting. He was happy to work for the philanthropic Crown family, owners of Material Service Corporation, and to share an office with Jerry Ratner, a University of Chicago law graduate and philanthropist as well. After 40 years, he retired at age 73, but continued to practice law and, with particular relish, to accept pro bono cases where he could fight ferociously for the little guy. It was only after his last birthday, his 85th birthday, that we were able to convince him that it was time to officially retire and close his practice, and he did that very reluctantly. The focus of his 60-year legal practice was construction law. He was an original member of the Society of Illinois Construction Attorneys, whose membership is by invitation only, where he's known as the expert on Illinois mechanics lien law. He generously helped colleagues and opponents alike, and was known for his encyclopedic knowledge of the law, as well as his honesty and sense of fair play. His completeness, even when some facts might not support his argument, earned him the respect of judges and other attorneys, who often relied on his advice. He was very proud to recently have received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Chicago Bar Association, where he served as construction counsel. My father impacted Illinois law in several ways. First, he served on multiple select committees that drafted amendments to the Illinois Mechanics Lien Act. He also affected Illinois law through the published opinions of cases that he won. In at least one of these, where there was no relevant prior decision in the context of mechanics lien, he was exceptionally creative in applying a concept from bankruptcy law. This changed law. He had an exceptional work ethic, which he attributed to my grandfather, and was always thorough. A commentary reviewing another one of his successful cases with a published opinion instructed readers to take note of his aggressiveness in protecting his clients and the comprehensiveness of his arguments. In the law, my father was also committed to education. He authored many book chapters and continuing education articles. Even though this is uncommon for a non-academic, it was consistent with his values and his efforts as an adjunct professor at the John Marshall Law School. His greatest contribution to the law, and a lasting contribution, is his textbook, Turner on Illinois Mechanics' Lien. With typical humility, he initially resisted including his name in the title, but I think in the end he was truly honored that his colleagues insisted. Ever the educator, he sought to make the book accessible to all, and he accomplished this by inventing a presentation style in which the main text was appropriate for contractors and non-specialist attorneys to read, but the footnotes were exhaustive and included all the details and citations that experts would require. The resulting text is now ubiquitous in classrooms, law offices, and courtrooms, and is referred to as the Bible of Illinois Mechanics' Lien Law. My father accepted the compliment, but rejected the term, of course, pointing out that there's only one Bible. I cannot finish without expressing my father's and my family's gratitude to Donna Becker. Donna, a patent attorney by training, took on the roles of colleague, confidant, and ultimately advocate and caregiver. Despite visiting in person and by phone and conferring with his doctors, my residence in Boston made it impossible for me to be involved with my father's care as I would have liked. Donna did all that I would have wanted to do and much more. Without her, my father could not have continued to practice the law he loved for as long as he did. Donna both enhanced and extended my father's last years and is a true angel on earth. Thank you, Donna. Judy, Hannah, and I were glad to visit him in person last month, and we were particularly happy that my father was able to join our Seders last week via Zoom. On the first night, he took his usual thoughtful approach and promised to share his comments on the Seder after reflection. On the second night, he expressed real happiness with the Seder that was largely conducted by Hannah and Emily, and noted that it had recognizable elements of the Seders he led when Hannah, Emily, Judy, my mother, and he went away for Passover together. He seemed content that he was leaving a strong family legacy. I spent much of last Saturday talking with my father, and he seemed at peace. Donna and I were with him Sunday morning, and he spent some time with Judy, Hannah, and Emily via Zoom. It was clear that he was saying his goodbyes. He passed away quietly shortly after that. My father will be remembered as a brother, father, grandfather, friend, and colleague. I will remember him most for the lessons he taught me, dedications to family and community, hard work, honesty, scholarship, Judaism, tzedakah, and tikkun olam. So rather than grieving for his loss, I am thankful that he was. May his memory be a blessing.
I'm now going to read some words on behalf of his daughter, Robin. Robin wrote, I wanted to share this very special time that I know meant so much to Dad and to all three of us. Howard and his grandchildren have very special bonds. His impact on their lives was great because of how much he shared with them. A time Jake will never forget that truly meant so much to Howard and Jake was when Howard would tutor Jake on FaceTime after school every week to learn his bar mitzvah Torah portion. An unbreakable bond was formed between them, and the trip to Israel together will forever be a highlight in Jake's life and memories of Zadie. Whether it was waking up early to teach Jake chess or play Battleship on the many visits Robin, Ben, and Jake made to Mulberry Place, or singing Hebrew songs on Passover Seder, the time Howard spent with his grandchildren was very special and an important part of their development into the wonderful people they have become. Zadie will be missed, forever and forever loved. Thank you, Robin. I'm now going to call up his brother David to say some words.
My brother Howard was a complicated man, and when we were young, we had a complicated relationship. However, we grew closer as we aged, and I believe over my lifetime, I got to know him extremely well as anyone has. Howard had a strong personality and sometimes could be hard on people around him. Nonetheless, though we sometimes quarreled during our early years, as most young siblings do, I don't remember ever having a cross word with him once we became adults. Perhaps it was because I was his little brother, but he was always kind and gentle with me. Over many years, we made a point of having lunch together at least once per month. I enjoyed these encounters very much. Howard was very intelligent, and he was very knowledgeable about some things that I was not, and so I learned a great deal from him. Howard was a very generous, very charitable man. He was particularly devoted to the concept of tikkun olam, the repairing of the world. He was, as you have heard, an excellent attorney, so much so that he received the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Illinois Bar Association not long before his passing. In addition to his substantial philanthropy, Howard expressed his generosity through extensive pro bono legal work. If, as Jerry has said, if Howard thought that a little guy had been wronged and believed there was a legal remedy, he would take the case on pro bono and thoroughly enjoy going after the person or persons he thought had committed the wrong. An example was a distraught African-American man who approached Howard on the steps of a courthouse asking him if he were a lawyer. The man explained that he was being badly cheated in a transaction to repair his home and asked if Howard could help. Howard thought the man was in danger of losing his home. Of course, that problem was right in Howard's wheelhouse. He was, in fact, in the midst of writing his textbook that Jerry has spoken of, and has recently been published by the Illinois Bar Association. Naturally, he felt very comfortable with the man's problem, so much so that he firmly believed that God had brought the man to him for help. Howard took the case pro bono, and after considerable effort, won the man a favorable outcome. Another example was the sister of a friend of mine who had been let go by her employer because of disabilities she acquired as the result of multiple sclerosis. This was many years before the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act. But Howard took the case pro bono and taught the employer, a large corporation, a well-deserved lesson. I will miss Howard very much. More precisely, I will miss Howard as he was until his illnesses began to whittle away at his body and his mind, taking away from me the man I knew so well and admired, not only as my brother, but as my friend.
Thank you, David, for those beautiful words. I'm now going to share some words from Marjory Newman, who was a colleague, and Howard was one of her mentors, and Howard had expressed interest in her saying some words today at his funeral. Unfortunately, with the nature of never knowing when somebody will pass, she's out of town, but I believe she's on the live stream, and she sent me her words, which I'll read on her behalf. When Howard asked me to speak at his funeral, I was both honored and scared. How do you sum up in 5 minutes the life of a truly great person that I knew for almost 40 years? Howard was my colleague, my mentor, my co-author, and my friend. Although I was prepared for Howard's death, I was not ready. Now that the time has come, I think Howard would be pleased with the outpouring of love and respect from his peers, although Howard was definitely in a class by himself. Some of the comments made about Howard were, A, he put passion into a 100-plus-year-old mechanics lien statute, and he did it with aplomb. Second comment, the dean of the construction bar, a scholar and a gentleman. A third comment, a consummate lawyer. A fourth, we Illinois construction lawyers stand on his shoulders. A fifth, his book, Turner on Illinois Mechanics Liens, is a testament to the depths of his knowledge and his willingness to educate the bar. Sixth, Howard was equal parts bulldog and teddy bear. I think all of us can attest to that. Seventh, Howard was generous to others with his expertise, time, and concern. Another, Howard exemplified the very purpose of membership in the Society of Illinois. Another, construction lawyers. Give back to the industry, respect your peers, and respect your opponents. The last was a bit challenging for Howard because he did not suffer fools lightly. And the final one she got from her colleagues, Howard was a brilliant construction lawyer. Her words continue, Marjory's. What I remember best about Howard was how tenacious he was in his representation of his clients. We both primarily represented subcontractors, and he often expressed to me that subcontractors could be just as powerful as general contractors. You just had to be willing to walk off the job. Of course, Howard's subcontractor clients were bigger than mine and had more clout. Still, he taught me a valuable lesson. No matter how low on the feeding chain, be tough. As we say goodbye to Howard, I do not think he would want us to leave here today simply remembering him. I think he would want us to follow in his footsteps, be dedicated to our profession, and be committed to a better world. I hope we all honor Howard's memory by continuing to give back to the construction industry and committing to a better tomorrow each and every day. May his memory always be for a blessing. Marjory. Beautiful. To begin my personal remarks, I would like to share two quotes which I believe help frame Howard's character. In the book of Dvarim, Deuteronomy from the Torah, there's only one Bible, it states, "The rock, his work is perfect, for all God's ways are justice, a God of faithfulness and without iniquity, just and right is God." And one from, as was mentioned, one of his favorite contemporary thinkers and writers, Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. He wrote, "Teachers open our eyes to the world. They give us curiosity and confidence. They teach us to ask questions. They connect us to our past and future. They're the guardians of our social heritage. We have lots of heroes today, sportsmen, supermodels, media personalities. They come, they have their 15 minutes of fame, and they go. But the influence of good teachers stays with us. They are the people who really shape our life." For those who really knew Howard, you knew that he had incredibly deep faith in God, in Torah, and in the importance of living a principled life. It was from this faith that flowed his passionate and deep commitment to his values: Judaism, honesty, justice, leadership, peoplehood, Israel, tzedakah, and education. Motivated by these values, Howard had a major impact on those whose lives he touched and on the causes he held dear. He believed in the critical importance of education and both honored and supported teachers in every way he could. He believed in what Rabbi Sacks said, as well as being a teacher himself. He pursued justice with a passion both in his career and in his personal life, and he lived to serve both our community at Bethel as well as his beloved family. Therefore, at this time, it is my sad honor to extend my condolences and those of our community at NSS Bethel to Howard's family, to his cherished children, to Gerald and his wife Judy, and to Robin and her husband Benjamin, as well as to his adored grandchildren Hannah, Emily, and Jake, and to his loving brother David, as well as to all the other relatives and friends who are here physically, online, or spiritually. My prayer is that the words offered here this day, the community that surrounds you, the traditions of our people, and the presence of God all provide you with some measure of comfort at a difficult time. I also want to just echo the words that Jerry said and thank Donna Becker for all of her help and support to Howard throughout the years. As Jerry said, not only in his professional life, but by caring for him so diligently and with such love and compassion for these many, many months where he's been struggling. Thank you. It's now my honor to say a few words about Howard's life, to add a little bit to what Jerry, Robin, and Marjory and David already shared. As many of you know, Howard was a lifelong Chicagoan who grew up in Albany Park and went to Von Steuben High School. This is a fact over which the two of us bonded because my bubby went there as well, although 10 years before him. Early life was sometimes a bit of a challenge as his father went off to fight in a war. Yet as you heard, whatever challenges on the home front, Howard completely excelled in school. For example, he graduated high school early, and he earned his bachelor's in 56, his law degree in 59, and he was an attorney by age 23. This launched an incredible and a long career, which has already been talked about in construction law, and specifically in mechanics liens, which I know nothing about, so I guess I have to read the textbook. As you heard, he literally only stopped serving his clients months ago. Obviously, he needed Donna's help for a while, but it's amazing how long his career was. He worked for over 40 years at Golden Ratner, and he was a senior attorney assigned to Material Services Corporation, as you heard. And you also heard that he was the expert in mechanics lien law and literally wrote the book. He was very proud of that book, has been noted. And he was modest about it, but also very proud of that book. He did talk about it with other people, and it really is something to have pride over. It was written for anyone to read, but also very, very deep and respected by those who are experts. Over the course of his career, he advised many judges, senior attorneys, and was a mentor to many young lawyers, a fact that he often shared with me. I know I'm not a lawyer, but I think that in our many conversations, he was likening his mentoring young lawyers to likening me as the rabbi of Bethel as well. As was mentioned, though, I want to say a little bit about, he loved academics, and he did teach classes at John Marshall, and he authored scholarly articles, as you heard. But at Bethel and in his life, this was very important to him, to be able to be a teacher, to spread his knowledge, to share with others, to give of the knowledge that he had to people who might use it. And he approached things often in a very intellectual way and bridged that to pragmatics, which was part of one of his gifts. I want to also share that he cared so deeply about his clients. And in our conversations, he reflected that to me. You could tell in the passion of the stories that he told, including the one that David shared about the gentleman that he met on the steps of the courthouse, how much he truly cared and how upset he was about people that were taken advantage of. He was always honest in his dealings. He worked incredibly hard, and he was quite formidable to his adversaries. In short, he had a fantastic career and was a dedicated and well-respected attorney in his field. I want to also share a little bit about what David said. It's important to note that Howard did a tremendous amount of pro bono work. It was really critical to him that people who might not have resources still receive justice. He believed that was the American way. And he felt a moral obligation, a personal moral obligation, to defend those who had less power from being taken advantage of by those who had more. He told me the same story, so I'll spare you a retelling of the story of the man on the steps of the courthouse. But that guy hit the jackpot in meeting Howard, because he went all out to win a favorable settlement. And I agree, he told me the same thing. He felt that God had placed him there. And it was his obligation to help this man. And the thing is he did this for many people. Maybe not in such dramatic fashion, but he worked pro bono for many, many people. And that's something that we should all respect and admire. In addition to his devotion to justice and law, Howard loved his family deeply. He met the love of his life, Sandi, when they were practically kids. They attended the same high school, but I was told they didn't meet until a mutual friend's 18th birthday party. Howard's recollection of that day was so precise that he recalled to me and many others later that Sandi was wearing a striking purple sweater, and he remembered exactly the moment. But bottom line, by the end of that party, he had asked her on a date. And after many years of dating, While Howard finished law school and Sandi got her education degree, they were married. 56 years. Truly devoted to each other, their children, their grandchildren, and together devoted to Bethel and the community at large. I will say that through all of Sandi's medical issues, Howard was always at her side as a companion and a helper. He's talked to me at length in general, but in specific about Sandi. He always praised her as a mother, a wife, and as a devoted teacher. He respected her as an educator. He admired her, he depended on her, and maybe there's some comfort that they're together. While much of the day-to-day child rearing was definitely in Sandi's territory, Howard took a strong interest in his children, especially in their education and their moral development. In fact, Jerry recalled being taken to the courthouse by his father showing him how the justice system worked and what he did for his career. This was repeated, of course, for the next generation, so he took his grandchildren as well, and they found the time spent with Howard in the courthouse to be impactful and enlightening. He was so proud that both of his kids were doctors and had successful careers and married wonderful people and gave him incredible grandchildren. Robin shared that it meant so much to her family that they would see him once a month, that he was able to teach Jake his Torah portion, as you heard, for his bar mitzvah, and sometimes just sit and play Battleship with him, which they both enjoyed. In fact, Howard told me so often how proud he was of Jake for his bar mitzvah preparation and for how he performed on his bar mitzvah and in general all the things that he is able to accomplish. Robin also shared how much she loved having him for Passover and Thanksgiving. Hannah and Emily shared how much Howard taught them about Judaism, history, and ethics. As you heard, he even created the Three Things Foundation based on his core values and asked his granddaughters to help him allocate the funds. What a great educational project. What a wonderful lesson. Hannah expressed how much pride he had in his faith and what a love for learning he possessed, which caused him to do so much critical thinking about ethics, law, and the principles of Judaism. They will always remember him for his love of spreading his knowledge to them and to so many others. As you all know, Howard also deeply loved his Jewish tradition and faith. From the moment he and Sandi came to Bethel, he was utterly devoted. He must have held every position, including ritual and education, culminating in him becoming president of the congregation and being appointed as a trustee. Those who are involved in Bethel know what I'm about to say. As a trustee, even after his executive leadership at the congregation was essentially finished, when most leaders take a back seat, he came to almost every board meeting, participated vigorously, joined committees, and until this past year was a member of that Board of Education, and he definitely participated. Howard brought great passion, creativity, determination, and a great deal of toughness to his leadership at Bethel. During his tenure, not only did he hold all of those positions and give countless hours and much thoughtful advice to the synagogue, but he also created innovative projects, some of which are still growing today. When his kids were young, he threw himself into the Indian Guides and Princesses clubs that created youth activities based on leadership and values. But then he realized that these clubs for Jewish kids should reflect our Jewish heritage. And he created the Lions of Judah and the Daughters of the King, which was very successful for many years. Now we have Jewish troops of Boy Scouts, which were not available then, as well as extensive family and youth programming, which he was tremendously proud of. He's so proud of the current educational and family programming at Bethel, and he sees that as an extension of what he did. He was also one of the creators of the Sokol Hebrew High School, creating an institution that continued the supplementary education for hundreds upon hundreds of Jewish teens post-B'nai Mitzvah. And he was perhaps most well known, as was already stated, of creating the Ba'al Korei Torah Reading Institute. But what I want to say about it is that it's now morphed into Team Torah, which just recently celebrated over 120 unique Torah readers just this year, surpassing all previous records. And I know he was proud of that. And you heard that most recently Howard honored the memory of his wife by dedicating classroom and providing smart boards and teacher training that not only transformed Bethel's religious school, but also changed how we connected with learners of all ages, especially with those portable smart boards. In short, Howard lived Bethel, and he breathed Bethel, and he saw Judaism and our tradition as incredibly important gifts to be shared with all. We owe Howard a deep debt of gratitude for everything he did for our community. And it wasn't just for Bethel, As you heard, he was generous with his tzedakah, his giving. He was a huge supporter of Israel and Jewish peoplehood. He was very involved in Soviet Jewry and even met Natan Sharansky personally. I want to say from my heart, I knew Howard from the moment I arrived almost 18 years ago. There was actually no way not to know Howard almost immediately. We partnered on many initiatives, had many talks, and I was the recipient of a lot of Howard's advice. What stands out to me, though, was how much he cared. How much he cared about Judaism, morality, about the synagogue, and he did care about me personally, and I could see that too. He was constantly concerned that I would burn out. He checked in to make sure I was taking time off, that I had the right support behind me, and that I was taking time to be with my family. When a rabbi is asked to do so many things, it is nice to have somebody actually think about you too. While I didn't always agree with Howard's perspectives on things, his opinions were always intelligent, and they advanced my thinking about whatever issue it was that we debated. And we definitely debated. Howard was always honest and straightforward. He has taught so many of us so many things and impacted the lives of countless human beings. Yehi zichro baruch, may his memory always be for a blessing. And let us all please say amen. Rabbi Kurtz also shared with me a few words, and I want to read them. Rabbi Kurtz, of course, was at the synagogue for so many years and knew Howard for a really long time. And I think he might be on the live stream now. So these are Rabbi Kurtz's words. Bryna and I were saddened to hear in Jerusalem of Howard's passing. We extend our personal condolences to the family. I know how proud he was of Gerald, Robin, and David and their families. I also know how proud he was of Sandi, of blessed memory, and her ability to reach out and touch students in her classroom. Howard was president when I came to Bethel, I meaning Rabbi Kurtz, of course, and welcomed me and my family with open arms to the pulpit. I was hired in September 1987, but did not really assume the pulpit until July 1988. It was a difficult period for the congregation, and Howard was very proud of the fact, as he should have been, of holding the community together. When I moved to Island Park, the first year was not an easy one, and we worked together to smooth out the transition and strengthen the congregation and the community. Just one story will summarize it all. On the day that Bethel honored Rabbi Bill Lebo for his extraordinary service to the congregation in December 1987, I traveled to Washington, D.C. for the large Soviet Jewry march attended by 250,000 people to protest Soviet treatment of our fellow Jews. Howard understood why I was not present at the event, but he wanted Bryna to be there, so he drove to Hyde Park, which was then our home, picked up Bryna on a snowy night, then brought her home after the event at Bethel. Over the 31 years I was at Bethel, we worked together on many projects. Howard was always concerned with the Jewish education of our children. He was generous with his time and his financial resources in this area. We didn't always agree on the methods to attain the goals that we both sought. When Howard agreed with your position, you could have no better ally. When he disagreed, let's just say he made it known both privately and publicly. We rarely disagreed on the goals for the community. It was more on the implementation of the methods of how to get there. Howard's hand was in many places in our educational system. He helped create the Bethel High School program, now the Sokol Hebrew High School. He worked to strengthen the education of our children in the Cohen Religious School, including assisting in new technological advances being made available to the school. He helped establish and fund the Israel Scholarship Program at the congregation, and of course he and Sandi created the Ba'al Korei Institute, which they funded, and he chaired for many years, working, especially with our children, but also with our adults, to create a Torah reading corps of individuals to ensure that the Torah would always be read at Bethel, as Eli Field would say. Howard realized, in the words of Joshua Jacobson, who wrote the definitive book on the chanting of the Hebrew Bible, that chanting the Torah correctly is a system that can make the words come alive. He took difficult assignments on himself to show that it is a weighty responsibility, but also a great source of pleasure and accomplishment to read the Torah on the Bima on Shabbat and festival mornings. Howard was very bright, and not only a learned practitioner of the law, but a student of Torah. He studied with me in the Loop Lunch series and was a student for many years in the Talmud class of Rabbi Weil. He asked challenging questions, and he was never satisfied with simplistic answers. He was well-read and knowledgeable. He has left his mark on the Bethel community, and I, in particular, will always recall with great respect and gratitude his support and assistance in the early years of my tenure at Bethel. which allowed me and the congregation to create a solid platform of working together to create a strong, vital, and knowledgeable community of caring Jews, which continues today under the very capable leadership of my successor, Rabbi Michael Schwab. May his memory be for a blessing. Amen. Okay, I'm now going to ask the family who are seated or anybody else who's able to rise to please stand, and we're going to ask the folks to lower the casket. As the casket is lowered, I'm going to recite from Psalm 121. Shir Lamalot, Esa Enai El Harim Me'ayin Yavo Ezri, Ezri Me'im Adonai, Oseh Shamayim Va'aretz, Al Yitain Lamot Raglecha, Al Yanum Shomrecha, Hine Lo Yanum V'lo Yishan, Shomer Yisrael, Adonai Shomrecha, Adonai Tzilcha Yad Yaminecha, Yomam HaShemesh Lo Yakeka, V'yareach Balayla, Adonai Yishmorcha Mikol Ra, Yishmor Et Nafshecha, Adonai Yishmor Tzidcha Uvoecha, Me'ata V'yad Olam. A song for ascents. I turn my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from God, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. The guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your protection, a guardian at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm and guard your life. God guards your going and coming, now and forever. Al Mikomo Yavo V'Shalom. May Howard Turner go unto God in peace. Amen. There's already Israeli earth inside the casket, representing Howard's eternal connection to the people and land of Israel. I'll also add Israeli earth between the casket and the vault cover, which will now be placed. So they figure out the mechanics. I'll recite a psalm. Michton leDavid, Shomreni el kichisi tivach, Amart l'Adonai Adonai ata, Tovati ba'alecha, Likdoshim asher ba'aretz hema, V'adirei kol cheftzivam, Yirbu atzvotam acher me'aru balasich, Nizkehem midam, Uvalasa et shmotam al sfotai, Adonai menav chelki v'chosia tato mikorali, Chavalim nafalu b'nimim af nachalat, Shofra alai. Avarech et Adonai asher yatzani, Af leilot yisruni chilyotai. Shiviti Adonai lenegdi tamid ki mimini balemot. Lachen samach libi v'yagel kavodi. Af b'zari yishkon lavetach. Ki lo tazov nafshi lishol lo titen chasidcha lirot shachat. Todieni orech chaim sov asmachot epanecha. Nimo b'minecha netzach. Vayashov ha'afar al aretz k'shaya v'aruach tashuv el Elohim asher natana. The dust returns to the earth as it was, but the spirit returns to God who gave it. May Howard Turner's soul be bound up in the bond of life eternal. Send comfort, God, to those who mourn. Grant strength to those whose burden is sorrow, and let us all say, Amen. This time I'm going to recite the memorial prayer in Howard's memory. El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Hamatzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, B'ma'alot Kedoshim Utorim K'zohar Ki HaMazhirim, Et Nishmat Moshe Chaim Ben Shimon Raphael Shalach Li'olamo, B'gan Eden Tzei Menuchato, Ana Ba'al Rachamim, Hastirei B'seiter K'nafecha Li'olamim, Utror B'tror Chaim Ben Nishmato, Adonai Nachlato V'yanuch B'shalom Mishkavo V'nomar Amen.
El Malei Rachamim, exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Howard Turner, who's gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that a loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen.
Now I'm going to ask Jerry, David, and Robin to recite the Mourner's Kaddish with me. Afterwards, we will do the burial, and I'll give people instructions for that in a moment. You all have? Yikadal v'yikadash shemei rabbah v'yalma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael ba'agalau v'zman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehi shmei rabba mavorach le'olam olomei almaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shmei Kudusha Brichu Le'ela Min Kol Birchata V'Shirata Tushbechata V'Nechemata Damiran V'Alma V'Imru Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya V'Chaim Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Imru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'Romav Hu Ya'aseh Shalom. Aleinu v'al Kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. It's a Jewish custom that it's we, the people who knew Howard, loved him, his community members, his family, his friends. We put him to his final rest, and so we participate in the burial. There are a few customs to follow in order to do it with the right kavanah, the way it was intended. First of all, we don't hand the shovel one person to the next. We put the shovel back in the earth, and the person, you can hold it there for the person to take, to show that we're not in a hurry or enjoying ourselves in any way, shape, or form. You do at least 3 shovelfuls to show that you're not just doing one and kind of walking away from the responsibility. 3 is considered a chazaka, something significant. And some people have the custom of, instead of the first shovelful being normal, that they turn the blade of the shovel over and push your first one in, because you would never do that in a normal act of shoveling, and it reminds you that this is an act of chesed, an act of loving kindness towards another person. So just please be careful around the graveside. Do you want to make an announcement before they do that?
As the rabbi mentioned, for those who are approaching the grave, please watch your step as the ground is uneven. At the conclusion of the interment, the family will be sitting shiva at their residences at the separate times in Zoom links. That information is on the service folder that you received. And for those joining us on Zoom, that information is on the same website that you logged on to. The family has also requested that memorial contributions can be made to North Suburban Synagogue Beth. That information, again, is on the service folder that you received and also on the website that you joined to the Zoom. So if we could ask the family to come forward, and again, watch your step as they approach the grave. And you may go on either side of the mount. We can go on either side of the mount for those that are waiting online. We can come on this side or on this side.
Most in several ways.
That was before she got. Yeah. I have a different picture about the recent family picture. A lot of people are like, who is that tall person? I was like, that's the father.
They lived right by the school, though, right?
I would notice that.
Yeah. Every Shabbat we would get some post, right? Your father would sit down. Oh, really?
Person.
And then we were way up the hill when I was in Wayne Thomas. We did from 6th grade. When my grandma died and my grandpa died. Almost to like Forest. That's what I said. But yeah, it's a long way.
Very cautious. That's how that was the chink there.
Well, we had my parents every Thanksgiving, and then once my mom and my dad every Passover, every kosher.
It was definitely him.
But he would
Yes.
last 1,000 years because it's funny. One of my friends says, picture series, but he was very interesting. So nobody minds.
But I've got
The goodbye thing is funny. They'll just hang up the phone. They used to just hang up. Oh, yeah. No goodbye.
Which album? Does it matter, Miles? It doesn't matter, either one? Yeah. You're right. No, you're totally right. When you're right, you're right.
Yeah. Ben.
This is my husband. Sorry. I could introduce you.
Pleasure meeting you.
I know he knows you. You know Sandi.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But,
Other than this.
yes. Greg is married to someone I went to school with. Like grammar school and all that. Back then it was creepy. Now it's okay.
Say you went to college together. That would have been so creepy. Yeah.
It was 80 degrees, and we just, and then it said it was supposed to be sunny and in the 50s, but then it turned. It's funny.
Isn't that so?
Okay, go ahead. Nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you. Please say hi to Naomi. Yeah. This one.
Oh, but he won't know.
I mean, I have yours.
Yeah, but he won't. He'll come and
I recognized you from a distance.
Sorry to see under these circumstances.
Yeah, us too.
Yeah, rather. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I know we did.
Well, we were in Florida for the winter, and I called them all the time. And sometimes talk to him, sometimes talk to them. And I never thought he'd last till we came back.
Not yet. We do, but I do for sure.
I talked to him last week, and he was, the old Howard.
You still want to show up like that?
Yes, I have one. I can probably.
Yeah, but all the rules are true.
to Rhoda last night, and they're both not up to
I thought it was going to be a lot warmer here this time.
There are a lot of people here for
Jumping up and down, so excited. Like,
I know I got a note from
this was somebody passing on him. Possible.
All I can tell you is thank goodness for Waze.
Yeah, right?
Yes.
That's right.
I have a 2019 Acura. The navigation system could not find 7801 West Montrose, so I had to use Waze.
Do you know Sandi? Sandi's our cousin.
Jerry Lacey.
Jerry Lacey is one of my parents' best friends.
That was her pediatrician.
Yeah, she was. Yeah, definitely was my pediatrician. He put these holes in my ear. I remember that day. You know? But yeah.
Well, the only medicine I practice now is my granddaughter at University of Michigan has a sore throat, takes a selfie and sends it me. Sadie, do I need to go to the health center?
Oh my God! I get all my friends' kids that are in college are taking pictures of their eyes and sending them to me. And can you call me something? Yeah. But that's okay. That's good. You should be enjoying other things. I said I'm not going to stop doing it. But I think at some point, like, there's other things you want to avenues, and you get this life, you want to try other things. Like 30 years and I'm in a room with no windows. You know. The little room with no windows. Right. But anyway, thank you so much for coming.
Good to see you.
And when you talk to the Rothmans, tell them we love them, and you know it was what was done. He wants to Thank you so much. Let's go. You're saying let's go this way.
Help you.
Well, you got to walk through the aisle. You and your brother and